Hi everyone! So as you can tell by the title today, I'll be reviewing bird courses that I took at the University of Waterloo. So these are the courses that I will be going over today. I'll also include the timestamps somewhere below in case you just want to skip ahead to one of the courses I'll be talking about. For each course, I'll be giving a description on whether I took it online or in person, the professor that I took it with, the types of assessments that I had, and then my experience with the course. I'll also be giving 2 ratings. One rating is whether I think it's a bird course for whether you just want to pass or get like an 80 plus. And then the second rating I'm going to give is whether I think it's a bird course for if you're aiming for a 90 plus. Because I do think there's a difference between those two. Like some courses are a bird course for if you just want to pass, but then once you want to get like a high mark, it takes like a lot more effort. So yeah, I'll be giving those 2 ratings. And just to be transparent, so when I went in to take these courses, I was aiming to get a high mark in them so that it could help boost my average for graduate school. So hopefully that gives you a better idea of the mindset I had going into these courses. So yeah, let's get started. So the first course I'm going to talk about is CLAS 104, and this one's a pretty popular bird course. It's about Greek mythology, so you'll learn stories of gods, goddesses, and heroes. I took the online version of the course with Ron Croker. And the types of assessments I had online quizzes and then a final. And since my course was online, the final was weighted pretty heavily. It was at least 40%, and it was in person because I took it before COVID. And so my experience was that the course was actually really content heavy. There was a lot of stories and details that you had to memorize. I think that if you wanted to just memorize the main points of the stories, I think you could easily get an 80 plus. But if you wanted to get like a 90 plus, you had to do a good amount of studying because you need to memorize all the little details. And then there were some minor stories in there that you also had to memorize because they would test on that if you want to get those like last few marks. Yeah, and I think it was like kind of difficult to memorize all those small details because names weren't in English. They all sounded the same. And yeah, it was just hard to like keep everything in my brain. But yeah, so the 2 assessments was the online quizzes. So the online quizzes were pretty reasonable and fair. I literally did the readings the day of. I just read through the module and then I did the quiz right after I finished reading the readings. And I don't think the quizzes had any trick questions. It was mostly what you read. But I think the final was very challenging. And I think they made it difficult on purpose because for an online course, they kind of assume that people might be cheating. So maybe the final was a way for them to balance out the marks in the course. So yeah, my final was pretty difficult. They had a lot of questions on like small details in the stories. And then they also tested on those minor stories that you would have to put more effort into memorizing. And then also in my exam, they tested you on pictures. They would show you a picture from the textbook, and then they'd be like, what does this picture depict? And it would be like a picture of a vase. So yeah, I thought those questions were kind of tricky. For 80 plus, I think it's definitely a bird course. You probably just need to memorize the main points in the stories and you don't need to read the textbook. But for a 90 plus course, I don't think I would say it's that bird because I had to put in a decent amount of effort for the final and I was really stressing out because I had to memorize all the little details that they would ask me. So that's for CLAS 104. So the next course I'm going to talk about is Music 140. This course is about the history of popular music. So we learned about like the Beatles, Elvis Presley. It was pretty interesting. I took this course during COVID, so it was automatically all online. So my professor was Simon Wood, and this course was made out of 4 multiple choice tests, and that was it. When I took this course, I basically listened to the podcast that he would upload each week to learn, and that would be his lectures. So I just listened to that and I made notes on that. There is a textbook, and there are technically readings from the textbook, but before each test, he tells you what pages that he will be testing on, and it's not that many pages. And on the test, there's only a few questions that will come from the textbook. So if you're aiming to pass this course, you probably don't even need to read the textbook at all. So for all the tests in this course, I think they're like very fair. There's like no trick questions. All the questions that he asks are straight from his lectures or the pages that he assigned in the textbook. So that's why I would say if you're aiming for an 80 plus, it's definitely a bird course, and you probably don't need to read the textbook. You're probably just fine taking decent notes while listening to the lectures. And if you want a 90 plus, I would say it's also a bird course, but I would definitely recommend probably reading the textbook pages that he assigns, just so you can get those extra questions that he asks on the test. So the next course is CS 100, and this one's also a very popular bird course that people recommend to take. So in this course, I think I learned about the internet, how like computers work, Excel, HTML, and stuff like that. And my professor was Victoria Sagnini. I don't think it really matters like what professor you take this with though, because it's an online course, and then it's mostly also run by the TAs. So I didn't really have that much contact with the professor at all. And the types of assessments I had were weekly assignments, I think a midterm and a final. So I'm a psychology student, so learning about the internet and just how computers work is super boring to me. So I thought that type of content was a pain to like go through and learn. Excel was okay though, because I think most people already have a good foundation on Excel, and the things you learn there can be useful for the future too. So that was better. And then the part about HTML, that part I found pretty enjoyable because I did learn HTML back in high school. So I kind of already knew what they were teaching. So I basically had fun making the websites and stuff. For the assignments, they were weekly. You just read over their modules and then you do their assignments that week. And those are pretty fair, I would say. And they didn't take too long. I probably spent maybe max 2-3 hours a week reading over stuff and then doing the assignment. But then the midterms and finals, so that's where it like gets kind of weird, because on the midterm and final there were some questions that I thought like I could never answer no matter how hard I studied the notes that they gave me. So for example, like let's say in their readings they would teach you like 1 + 1 = 2, but then on the final or midterm, they'd ask you to do some calculus question. Like there was just no way I'd be able to answer that. So yeah, for 80 plus, I would say this is definitely a bird course. You don't need to spend that many hours a week. And then most of the things you kind of already know, like Excel. For 90 plus, I think overall, I would still say it's a bird, even though there's some weird questions on the exams. Like if you get hit with those super weird, hard questions, then I'm really sorry. It's just, I think it's just luck if your professor wants to put those questions on. There weren't that many, but when I did get one of them, I was like, what is this? And I think it might also help if you have a friend who's in CS or something who can tutor you on some of the readings. So yeah, that's for CS 100. So the next two courses I'm going to talk about, I'm just going to talk about them together. They're French 151 and 152. And because they're so similar in their structure, I'm talking about them together, so this video goes by quicker. So I think it's obvious, but these courses are about French. You're learning French. And I personally only took French up until grade 9. So I never took French in grade 10, 11, or 12. So yeah, that might be helpful. And then I think French 151, you can only take that if you didn't take grade 10 French. So for both these courses, I took the online offering, and my professor for both was Cynthia Tremblay. And although I didn't really interact with her much, she did send like a weekly announcement on Learn just to give you updates for the following week. So I thought that was pretty cute of her to do. And then the types of assessments are, you have like online tests, you have the oral assignment, a written assignment, and a final exam, which is in person and is weighed a little more heavy since it's an online course. So my experience, so for the oral assignment, I thought that was pretty easy. They just tell you to read like a paragraph, and then you record yourself and then you submit that on Learn. I think I took max 30 minutes to do that assignment, and that's because I was not happy with all the takes I did until the last one I did. But if you don't really care, I'm pretty sure you can get this over with in like 5 to 10 minutes. And then there was a written assignment, and that was also easy because it was only 80 to 100 words. And for one of them, I wrote about like my daily routine, and the other one I think I wrote about my favorite holiday. So yeah, 80 to 100 words isn't that much. And for the test, I literally read over the chapter the day of, and then I went and did the test either that night or the day after, so it wasn't that difficult. And the final was super reasonable. So even though it was weighed a little heavier, they do give you a sample final, which is 95% identical to what's actually going to be on the final. So I would definitely recommend doing their sample final because it's a big giveaway about what you're going to experience on the actual final. If you're aiming for 80 plus, I would say it's a bird course, unless you were super bad at French in high school. And if you were super bad, then I think I would just avoid the French courses in general. But if you were decent at it, I think this would definitely be a bird course for you. If you want a 90 plus, this is also definitely a bird course because everything was so reasonable and there was no trick questions. So yeah. So the next course I'll be talking about is ECON 101. I honestly don't really remember what I learned in this course besides supply and demand. I took the online offering of the course with Professor Wokia Kumasi. And the types of assessments, there were quizzes, a discussion participation part, a midterm, and a final. So my experience might be unpopular because I know Econ 101 is such a highly recommended bird course, but I didn't take econ in high school at all, and supply and demand and the curves and stuff that they teach you was pretty hard for me to grasp because you have to like move them left and right and stuff in the questions that they ask you, and spatial like orientation questions are just not my thing. So it took me a lot of time to actually get good at answering those types of questions. So yeah, I honestly thought Econ 101 was going to be easier than what it was for me. Some modules I thought were a breeze to get through, and then there were some modules and some weeks where I was just like, why isn't this module ending? Like it just felt like it never ended, and those modules were the worst to get through. But I'm sure if you like supply and demand stuff, then you'll probably enjoy it, but I just don't like it. And yeah, I didn't use a textbook for this course. I just read the modules that they gave us, and that was like sufficient. But yeah, I found that the weekly quizzes, the midterms, and the finals, they were all multiple choice, and the questions were very fair and reasonable. There weren't any questions that you didn't encounter before or you were surprised that you were asked that. For the discussion part of this course, they would like give you a prompt or a question to discuss on the Learn discussion board, and then you just have to like post your thoughts and then reply to some of your peers, and then you'll get full participation marks. So I think that's like not difficult at all as long as you put in that minimal effort. So yeah, 80 plus, I would say it's definitely a bird course, and 90 plus, I would say it's also a bird course because everything was so fair, even though I did find some parts of it boring. And I think there is a test bank out there, so if you can get your hands on that, then I think practicing those questions will definitely prepare you for the midterm and the final. So the last course I'm going to be talking about today is Sociology 101, and I took this course in person before COVID happened, and my professor was Katie Cook. She was a graduate student that was teaching at the time, so I'm not sure if she's still teaching right now. So the types of assessments for this course was tests, final, papers, and there was like this group assignment that you do maybe every other week after class. So my experience with this course was you definitely have to do textbook readings. You have to take notes during class. It was like a pretty content heavy course, but like the ideas were really easy to understand. So I think that's what made this course doable and easier. So if you want an 80 plus, I think this is definitely a bird course. The tests, the assignments, they were all very doable. 90 plus though, I don't know if I would say it's a bird course for everyone. If you're one of those people who are good at memorizing things, if you're a biology student, a psychology student, and you're like pretty good with all these readings and like memorizing stuff, then I think this would be a good bird course for you if you want to get 90 plus. But if you're not into memorizing stuff, then I think a 90 plus might be pretty difficult. And yeah, that's all for the video today. It's a pretty long video, but I hope some of the things that I shared was able to help you decide on which bird course to take. So yeah, thanks for watching.